buena gente, estamos aquí en este vídeo otra vez en el juego de Stanley no sé qué. Me estaba poniendo esto y yo no sé, literalmente inicié el juego, puse la hora, que me la pidió otra vez, me está diciendo esto. Hostia. Ahora sé que esta experiencia es importante para ti. Estás prestando atención. Ni siquiera tengo forma de saber si la hora que pusiste es la correcta. ¿Sabes algo? Hagamos un trato. No me doxees, chaval. Como cooperaste, la próxima vez que inicies el juego y veas esta pantalla, pon tu hora favorita en el reloj. Adelante, elige la hora que quieras, aunque no sea la correcta. Te lo ganaste. Ven, ya te dejo que vuelvas al videojuego. ¿Qué juego más raro? O sea, esto lo grabé otro día, ¿no? Obviamente. El Stanley. Y... Bro, qué rayada. Qué guay, bro. Pues aquí estamos, iniciamos partida. Y esta vez, en este vídeo, quiero hacer lo de seguir las indicaciones. O sea, ser el niño bueno, por así decirlo. Y a ver, ¿qué tal? Hola de nuevo, me acaba de dar un logro. Mara. Pues sabemos que estamos trabajando. Y esto estaba así. Y desaparecieron nuestros compañeros. Y no sabemos por qué.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
De su izquierda. Y yo siempre iba para la derecha. Esta vez vamos a la izquierda. No me dijo nada. Es como la... No. Una sala de... No, de reunión.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there.
Tomorrow, complete today. Bueno, espera. Tampoco me voy a poner a leer esto. Entonces está pasando solo. Everyone, you must have chart and slides. Bueno. A ver, broom closet. Vamos, la primera puerta que puedo abrir.
Stanley stepped into the broom closet, but there was nothing here, so he turned around and got back on track.
Bueno, estoy siendo buen chico. Aquí que me dice.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Hostia, mira cómo está allá abajo. Uf. Yo estoy siendo un niño bueno, Bueno, qué cambio, ¿no? O sea, la suite aquí del presidente. ¿Qué decía? To be rich, it's a crime. To commit crimes isn't it rich? What a life it will be to have to pick just one. No sé. ¿Puedo cerrar la puerta? Me gusta. Esta también. Bueno. Primero esto. No se puede abrir. No hay nada por aquí. Seguimos.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? What he could not have known was that the keypad behind the boss's desk guarded the terrible truth that his boss had been keeping from him. And so the boss had assigned it an extra secret PIN number, 2845. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
284.
Stanley just sat around twiddling his thumbs. Trying to input anything on the device was useless, yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. he stepped into the newly opened passageway.
The fuck. Qué juego más raro. Aquí me caigo. Oh, pues no. Un ascensor ahí. Bueno, no sé. Bajamos por el ascensor. Bueno, es diferente, la verdad. Hay bastantes cosas, por ejemplo, en la escalera si bajaba o cuando iba para la derecha, que estábamos en el almacén, yo me seguía en el ascensor. No sé, no sé.
Descending deeper into the building, Stanley realized he felt a bit peculiar. It was a stirring of emotion in his chest, as though he felt more free to think for himself, to question the nature of his job. Why did he feel this now, when for years it had never occurred to him? This question would not go unanswered for long.
¿Puedo subir? ¡Qué susto! Madre. ¿Puedo subir? Creo que sí, pero...
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility.
Escape. Vale, vale. Pero hay un montón de opciones. A ver, ¿qué hago? Mid Control Facility. Toma. Así un poquito. Un poquito. Yo voy a entrar. ¿Qué es lo que? Uy, baja el brillo, ¿no? Sí. Vale. Ya no hay vuelta atrás. Yo aquí hago lo que me piden. Yo no quiero susto, porque de verdad que yo no chillo, pero a lo mejor me quedo sin mando.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
No estoy entendiendo qué está pasando, pero me gusta. Y eso también me gusta, que me gusta algo que no sé qué está pasando. No hay nada, un botón para la cámara.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them, eternally monitored in this place where freedom meant nothing.
Yo era el 427, creo que era. Sí. Uy, ahora me podía agachar. Bueno. A veces nuestro jefe era un poquito loco, ¿no? Eso.
This mind control facility, it was too horrible to believe. It couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly?
Ya, pero...
No. He refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never. It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions. Happy, or sad, or content. Walking, eating, working. All of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he would dismantle the controls once and for all.
Okay. Pero no pasa nada. Vale, no. Mid control idle awaiting input. ¿Se va a cerrar la puerta? No. Pues no sé.
And when at last he found the source of the room's power, he knew it was his duty, his obligation, to put an end to this horrible place and to everything it stood for.
Entonces le doy a love, ¿no? Madre. Pétame más el tímpano, colega. El, el tímpano me gustaría conservarlo, la verdad.
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over? Yes. He had won. He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone?
También.
How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him. For it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel. Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door. Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
Termina un juego, me acaba de dar un logro. O sea, este es el final. Pero será lo mismo, plan, lo mismo si lo hubiera hecho ahora a que lo haga, plan, después, en plan, cuando llegue. Bueno, pues si me dio terminar el juego,
All of his
así.
co-workers were gone. What could it
Yo
mean?
creo que...
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Bueno, lo que voy a intentar ahora es ir y tocar el botón on en vez de off. A ver qué es lo que pasa. Hay algo encendido. Y nos vemos ahora. Bueno,
But here was
Ya.
the proof. The heart of the operation.
hablando este chaval.
Controls labeled
Ya
with
estamos por
emotions.
aquí.
Happy or
Y ahora
sad or
vamos a ver
content.
qué
Walking,
pasa.
eating, working,
Chaval,
all
cállese. Ahora vamos a ver qué pasa si le damos al botón on.
of it monitored and commanded
Que
from this very place.
encender, ¿sabes?
And as the cold reality of his past began
A
to
lo
sink
mejor
in,
no me deja.
Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert it. Oh, Stanley, you didn't just activate the controls, did you? After they kept you enslaved all these years, you go and you try to take control of the machine for yourself. Is that what you wanted? Control? Oh, Stanley, I applaud your effort, I really do. But you need to understand, there's only so much that machine can do. You were supposed to let it go, turn the controls off, and leave. If you want to throw my story off track, you're going to have to do much better than that. I'm afraid you don't have nearly the power you think you do. For example, and I believe you'll find this pertinent, Stanley suddenly realized he had just initiated the network's emergency detonation system. In the event that this machine is activated without proper DNA identification, nuclear detonators are set to explode, eliminating the entire
¿Qué
complex.
dice? ¿Qué dice?
How long until detonation then? Let's say 2 minutes. Ah, now this is making things a little more fun, isn't it, Stanley? It's your time to shine. You are the star. It's your story now. Shape it to your heart's
¿Qué
desires.
dice?
Oh, this is much better than what I had in mind. What a shame we have so little time left to enjoy it.
¿Qué dice?
Mere
¿Qué dice?
moments until the bomb goes off. But what precious moments each one of them is. More time to talk about you, about me, where we're going, what all this means.
Que esto tiene
I
código.
barely know where to start.
Yo qué sé.
What's that? You'd like to know where your co-workers are? A moment of solace before you're obliterated.
5 rojo.
All right,
O sea,
I'm good
hostia.
news. You're gonna die anyway.
5 verde.
I'll tell you exactly what happened to them. I erased them. I turned off the machine. I set you free. Of course, that was merely in this instance of the story. Sometimes when I tell it, I simply let you sit there in your office forever, pushing buttons endlessly and then dying alone.
5. A ver.
Other times, I let the office sink into the ground, swallowing everyone inside, or I let it burn to a crisp.
Para acá.
I have to say this, though. This version of events has been rather amusing. Watching you try to make sense of everything and take back the control wrested away from you, it's quite rich. I almost hate to see it go.
No entiendo la verdad.
Whatever I come up with on the next go around will be even better. My goodness, only 34 seconds left. But I'm enjoying this so much. You know what? To hell with it. I'm going to put some extra time on the clock. Why not? These are
Tengo que buscar un botón verde que ponga 5, a lo mejor.
Oh dear me, what's the matter, Stanley? Is it that you have no idea where you're going or what you're supposed to be doing?
Bueno, un montón de tiempo, chaval.
Or did you just assume when you saw that timer that something in this room was capable of turning it off? I mean, look at you. Running from button to button, screen to screen, clicking on every little thing in this room. These buttons, no, these colored ones, or maybe this big red button, or this door. Everything, anything, something here will save me. Why would you think that, Stanley? That this video game can be beaten? Won? Solved? Do you have any idea what your purpose in this place is? Stanley, you're in for quite a disappointment. But here's a spoiler for you. That timer isn't a catalyst to keep the action moving along. It's just seconds ticking away to your death. You're only still playing instead of watching a cutscene because I want to watch you for every moment that you're powerless. To see you made humble. This is not a challenge, it's a tragedy. You wanted to control this world, that's fine. But I'm going to destroy it first, so you can't.
¿Cómo que goodbye? Tu muela.
Take a look at the clock, Stanley. That's 30 seconds you have left to struggle. 30 seconds until a big boom and then nothing. No ending here, just you being blown to pieces. Will you cling desperately to your frail life, or will you let it go peacefully? Another choice. Make it count. Or don't. It's all the same to me, all a part of the joke. And believe me, I will be laughing at every second of your inevitable life from the moment we fade in until the moment I say, happily ever after.
Yo perdón, es que no sabía qué hacer. Es que quería ver qué pasaba si moría. No, fue de coña, porque me ponía en la pantalla 5 verdes, 5 verdes. Y pues veía muchos botones verdes, los clicaba y a lo mejor era un botón, tenía que darle al 5, no sé, tío. Me pilló aquí el juego, porque no tengo ni la más mínima idea de lo que hay que hacer. Ay, empiezo de aquí, tócate las pelotas, bro. Hombre.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
Bueno,
Stanley decided to go to the meeting.
Voy para allá
Perhaps he had simply
y de
missed the
mientras
memo.
le voy dando, le voy dando una idea a lo que es, porque no tengo ni idea. Gente, estoy de vuelta aquí y era... Bueno, ¿cómo fue lo de la bomba? Ya fui y seguí sin enterarme de nada. ¿Qué pasa? Que digo, bueno, voy a ver un vídeo a ver si yo qué sé, me da una pista o algo. No se puede desactivar la bomba. O sea, perdí mi tiempo yendo otra vez. Y o sea, básicamente perdí mi tiempo yendo para nada. Porque para nada. Porque no se puede hacer nada. Así que quería ver qué pasa cuando bajas aquí. Quería ver qué es lo que es. Así que con vuestro permiso voy a bajar aquí. Hostia, el garaje.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of existence in a single moment for no reason at all? None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went? And for that matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be real. And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. "I'm dreaming!" he yelled. "This is all a dream." Oh, what relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. And he thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too appeared. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up. How was he remaining so lucid? And then perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts, he thought. And while he thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be? Was Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life. Now, hearing the voice speak these words was quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of the mattress on his back, the fresh air of a world outside this one. Let me wake up, he thought to himself. I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons. Please, it's all I want. I want my apartment, and my wife, and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal. I am normal. Everything will be fine. I am okay.
No, ¿verdad?
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I? And everything went black.
The fuck. Yo me quedé quieto mirando el...
This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments, she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. the very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for
trabajo,
this,
seguro.
so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
¿Qué? O sea, que me fumé un petardovich el otro día, o sea, y sabes. Bueno, 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 bueno. Bueno, bueno, bueno. ¿Ya le aparezco aquí? Pues nada. ¿Qué? Nuevo contenido. Estoy en otra partida. Empecé de cero. Estoy...
Psst, Stanley. Just our Stanley, I think it's been a week.
¿Puedo salir? ¿Puedo salir?